There's also a culture where they don't try not to waste, and so some of them would actually try and ensure that if something goes wrong, can we do a quick service recovery? Now, that's
Hmm.
where it starts going wrong is, example, you have a vaccine and it goes below zero and it freezes and you try and defrost it. It's not the same as when it was not frozen.
Hello, and welcome to a new episode of ColdSecrets. My name is Miguel Sirvent, and today I'm very pleased to have with us Derek.
Hello, Miguel. Good to see you.
Where are you based, Derek? Because we are in Barcelona, and I was about to say good morning. We are recording now, it's 11 a.m. Here in
Yeah.
Barcelona.
So, good evening. I'm based in Singapore, although I spend a lot of time in the Asia region, including China and Hong Kong.
All right, so it's almost the end of the day for you now. Perfect. Well, I would like to start, if you can summarize in a few sentences to our audience, who is Derek Lee?
Okay, so well, nice to meet everyone. I am previously the former VP of Pharma and Healthcare with Jazz Worldwide. My background has always been in a hybrid of building up new facilities and in medical devices, healthcare, and also in consultancy, both across physical infrastructure, operations, and also technology.
All right, good introduction. Um, I would like, you mentioned today is going to be a bit special for us because typically we talk about operational excellence and so on. But today we want to deep dive into something which is key in terms of cold chain logistics, which is the infrastructure which is needed in order to operate these cold chain logistics. I would like to start by a key question. Based on your experience, which are the differences that you experience in terms of cold chain infrastructure, of warehouses, facilities, etc., in the US, Europe, and Asia, for instance?
So I think one thing with regards to facilities, most companies are fantastic at building a fantastic four wall for cold chain, and I credit all my friends, competitors about doing that. What most of us always tend to forget is that we need end-to-end traceability. So five-star cold chain and one-star loading dock, which has no curtains and no continuity, or I need to go have a five-star warehouse on level 5 in Asia, and I've got cargo lift, which I need to wait, and there's no temperature control or mapping during in a cargo lift. So these are the kind of small things which we tend to think of in a facility, but not the end-to-end supply chain and continuity of the cold chain.
But have you experienced any major differences in terms of facility between different countries and regions, or
Yeah,
they are?
yeah, yeah, many. So I'll give an example. I mean, I've seen some in Taiwan. Like I said, it's the perfect example of what I just mentioned. A five-star facility, fully insulated, temperature mapped, but it only goes to the elevator. And then from the elevator down to the loading dock and waiting for the truck in the loading dock, completely no control over the cold chain and or the environment. So that's an example. We also have other cases where they put automation in retrofit and as part of efficiency, but then we don't start tracking what happens with the cold chain with the equipment, which as it gets hot, especially when you have conveyor belts which generate heat. So that's another interesting thing which we do in a region where as things get more and more automated, the original temperature mapping doesn't seem to get updated also. Yeah, we've also seen quite a few very positive cases in Singapore, Hong Kong, where they've started building out facilities from day one with the intention of cold chain. And so all your pipes, your water chillers and all that are built into the facility. So it actually makes a lot of sense. Then of course it's a pricing discussion because the landlord tries to make a bit more money. Everyone thinks if we can do something else different. But from an infrastructure perspective, you get some fantastic facilities. So I think what I would summarize to say that you can see some which are really, really good facilities, and you also see some very average facilities and trying to be retrofit to be of cold chain grade.
Yeah. And of course, these five-star facilities, it's kind of the trend, I would say, that the pharma and healthcare industry is going to. What's the role of 3PLs or 4PLs in terms of providing those five-star facilities? Is that a key partner for those pharma companies and healthcare industry, or how are they partnering together in order to meet the capex investment and also the compliance and regulatory constraints that this industry has?
So I would say that a lot of the 3PLs and 4PLs in the region have made a conscious effort over the last 5 to 10 years to invest into facilities which are of very high standards. And so we are very happy to see that they are making that commitment with possibly a 10-year lease, or they own the building. So that they spread the cost out, and subsequently that is amortized to the clients. Clients with 3PL have also been fairly reasonable. They know that they are paying certain rate for particular quality. They are not asking for 5-star quality with a 1-star price, right? So,
Mhm.
but I think what we're also looking at challenges of when 3PLs want to build a facility, they want to keep it as flexible as possible, that it can store pharma, medical devices, perishables, wine in the same facility. And there are some conflicts when it comes to that. And so that's where I think everyone tries to find a happy medium where can you store pharma on one level, fresh on a separate floor, or do you have a whole building just for pharma, or how do you separate it out?
And what do you think is the ideal setup? I mean, from a 3PL perspective, flexibility is kind of the key driver because then we are making a huge investment. So that capex needs to be flexible because if at some point in 10 years' time, then the pharma company decides to move to a different company, then you still have the facility there, which is lasting for, I don't know, which is the average duration of that type of
15,
facility.
15, 20 years.
Yeah. Okay. So it's let's say 50% of their entire life. But which is the more common setup that you have seen based on your experience? It's like a fully dedicated warehouse for one company, one industry, or it's like a multi-warehouse combined with different companies operating it?
So typically we see multi-tenants, multi-client. 3PL takes the capex, and they have
Mhm.
many clients in the same facility. In that case, most of us also build it for pharma grade to pharma specs, and it's easier to downgrade the specification if you need to food, or to, I would say food is probably the other option. Wine has a different requirement completely, and their temperature ranges are in fact tighter than for pharma. So typically it goes from pharma to perishables, but I have seen a case where it's gone from pharma into wine.
So it's always easier to downgrade specifications going from pharma to food other than the
Yeah,
other way around.
yeah. But funnily enough, you mentioned pharma to wine is actually really hard. So, and I
Why?
give an
That
example.
I didn't know.
So, like for pharma, I think most of us are familiar 2 to 8 degrees Celsius, 15 to 25 degrees Celsius. Wine is 12 to 15. So
12 to
for fine
15.
wine,
So
yeah.
very
So
tight.
the range is very tight, and it's not in the pharma ranges as well. So to try and do a mapping of the whole building again for 12 to 15, that's a lot harder than to get 15 to 25, where everyone just puts 20 degrees, and if it ups by 1 or 2 degrees, it's fine. Down by 1 or 2, it's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Then we have a clickbait title for this podcast, which is it's more challenging keeping a bottle of wine than a vaccine.
Yes, exactly. Wine is actually a horrible thing to try and keep, especially fine wine, where one bottle is probably the price of a vaccine, right? You've got a bottle of wine which is easily a collector's wine. 15, 20,000 US dollars is quite normal.
Uh-huh.
And you really don't want to be telling that, this bottle of wine, it can no longer be consumed because it was in 25 degrees for 2 hours.
Absolutely.
With vaccines, you
Absolutely.
can reproduce it. With wine, it's hard to find a 1970s winery which can reproduce the wine.
And one one question there, I see a trend that a lot of cold chain facilities are being developed in the African continent. Because there, my assumption then there is that the facilities are not up to the same level than in Europe, Asia, or the States in Africa. Which are the main drivers in order to make those investments in the African country? Do you see like a sustainable trend, or is something that is going to stop at some point? Which are the challenges and risks that you see there?
I think Africa is going to be the next Asia, where the development of pharma facilities and overall quality improvements will be coming. Probably not in the next 1-2 years, but I would say 5 to 10 years is quite likely. It remind me of a situation in COVID during the COVID times where we actually had to try and maintain cold chain integrity for a vaccine. It wasn't a COVID vaccine, it was for babies, not
Mhm.
rabies, but for a baby vaccine from China into Chad in Africa. And it was actually harder than we thought because of flight availability and how do we maintain temperature of -20 when it even arrived into Africa before it was dispensed to the clinics. So I see that right now everything is trying to be controlled out of the origin, and at some point they will start, improving the facilities in Africa, and subsequently they'll be able to, at least do a dry ice top up and do some value added services in Africa to at least ensure the quality of product into the end user in Africa.
Before you were talking about multi-tenant warehouses
Yes.
with different customers and different use cases and so on. And I want to touch upon, I mean, it's a one 3PL operating for multiple customers. And how do you ensure that the data sharing with those different customers, which are operated under the same building of the same 3PL, how do you ensure a smooth data sharing with with your customers, basically in terms of ensuring product integrity, compliance, and regulatory compliance, and the quality checks? Because
So
every customer will have their own specificities, their own requirements, etc. So how do you ensure this data sharing and communication with those customers?
yeah, so I think when you're in a multi-client facility, the objective is really to be very transparent. The data is shared to all clients in the same manner, which means that if they have data logger access, everyone will get access to the data loggers. Everyone will see the temperatures taken at, say, 15-minute intervals if they need it. Where your challenges come is if they say that, hey, I need a temperature range at the loading dock at, say, 4 p.m. and I can't identify which loading dock we went to, or if it's into a shared truck which handles multiple deliveries for
Mhm.
multiple clients. So that's when the devil is always in the detail. But in general, the rule of thumb is it's fully transparent. A QA handles it for all the clients, and they give the same data to all the clients.
Yeah. I mean, based on my experience, because I was working before in a pharma company and we're collaborating also with 3PL. And of course, the pharma company does not work only with one 3PL, but multiple one. And there, everyone was kind of sharing the information in their own way. So
Yes,
so then from I mean it's a challenge for both sides. It's a challenge for the pharma company itself, but it's also a challenge for the 3PL because everyone is talking their own language and they want the other one to adapt to your own language. So it's a kind of a what I always experience is that there was missing kind of a middleware trying to
hmm
translate, if we can
yeah,
say somehow, translate the information from the information that the 3PL needs and the information that the pharma company needs in order to make a standardized and uniform communication data layer in order to facilitate this data sharing. So that was my
yeah.
concern at that time.
And I think that you hit a very important point, which is it's very easy to send data, but not information.
Yeah,
Everyone gives you raw data, and then everyone tries to find someone who can actually process the data into information. Because the question which is being asked is, I got a temperature excursion on this shipment. Where did it happen, right? That's typically the kind of questions you get. Then the 3PL's response is, here's the data from the warehouse for this whole day. Everyone's like, okay, so that doesn't tell me anything, right? It just tells me that the temperature, uh, which was in the logger, but it doesn't tell me whether my product was out in the open dock for 5 minutes. That's why I had an excursion. The truck aircon was off, or something happened, right? So that's it. And I think that's where we are always looking at platforms or solutions to how can we track multiple data points to actually start isolating to give an answer to the problem. We don't want a whole lot of data which doesn't answer the question.
absolutely. I mean, if I can, I will take your sentence it's very easy to provide data, but not so easy to provide information. So I will keep it for myself because I'm absolutely aligned. That's, I mean, at some point, I even feel that we have so many data. We are overflowed with tons of data, which is not processed, or at least not processed in the way could that we could use it in an efficient way. It's the thinking should be about providing less and less data, but more information.
Yes, I mean, it's kind of
And
like you want to
answering.
throw all that into ChatGPT and say, "Tell me why my shipment had an excursion at 3:30 p.m." That's right. It's not. You don't want to say that. Okay, here's my data. This is my data logger's data. And then I say, oh, but my data logger doesn't have a GPS, so can I get a truck? Does it have GPS? Can I say where it happened? Where was my shipment when it happened? Was it on the truck, or was it on a loading dock, or was it somewhere else? And it doesn't answer the question. It just says that, oh, these are all my 100 megabytes of data, and go find the problem then.
Absolutely, especially now that there is on the supply chain, there is more and more IoT devices connected, which are
Yes.
providing data every second or minutes. So we have like terabytes of data created every single day, but there is no intelligence behind it able to process it and provide the relevant insights. And you also mentioned the ChatGPT through the bunch amount of data
Yeah.
and ask GPT to process it. So then it's quite related to this. So how do you see the importance or the impact of artificial intelligence in order to process uh, this amount of data that we are already generating?
Yeah. So I think this actually, it's interesting you mentioned this because this question has been asked a few times. I was asked the same question earlier today as well. Like, and the simple question was really, I've got all this data. Why can't I still get an answer to my question? And I think artificial intelligence helps where it can process a lot of data in a very quick amount of time, but we need to be able to structure the data to a point where artificial intelligence doesn't spend too much time processing the data to be a manageable data. So I mean, we don't want to use AI to create a data warehouse. We want AI to sort of really give us answers to questions and to a next extent forecast events which will create a temperature excursion to that extent. So what we're trying to use AI is for both predictive analytics and root cause analysis. That's how I will look at it. And I haven't found a solution which I can dump day-to-day data and to use that to give me an answer.
All right, Derek. I mean, it was not prepared at all, but actually what we are working at TrueCall is we are collecting information from different data sources, IoT providers and logistics
Mhm.
companies. We are centralizing such information. And once the information is centralized, we are able to compute. And through an AI algorithm, we are able to, first of all, generate predictive analytics with
Mhm.
risk score analysis and so on, but also defining the root cause analysis and also the corrective and preventive actions related to this temperature excursion. So very, very
It
happy to
sounds like
see
we
that
should
we
talk.
are that probably we should keep the conversation after the podcast finish
Yes.
and make some close the deal. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No, because I think it makes complete sense. I mean, all of us have a lot of data, and how much does it cost and the effort to build a database which can actually answer questions? That's really where the effort comes in.
Yeah, and as part of the team at Jazz, you are building the facilities and so on. So how relevant was the connected devices, so the data loggers, and in order to provide a good thermal mapping? Is that which was your driver to choose one or another provider, or what makes the difference, or how you see on that temperature monitoring equipment? You see it like an investment and something that you really need to have because it was a regulatory requirement. Which were the main drivers to make your selections on different providers?
So, as background, all our devices in the warehouse were connected devices, meaning to say that we had live monitoring I would say it's via, I think the network is Wi-Fi connected.
Mm-hmm.
It's either Wi-Fi or Bluetooth low energy connected. So we all had live monitoring, and the decision to go down that path was part of it was operational and part of it was commercial. So I'll start with operational. Operational is that we had hotspots and cold spots at high points in the building. So that was about 8-9 meters high. So it made sense that you didn't want to have a temperature monitoring device which was a single use and you had to go and read it because you would be going up and down scissors lifts trying to take temperature readings. So operationally, it just didn't make sense to using not connected devices. The other piece of it was, which is the commercial side of it, was it was actually more sensible to use connected devices. And quite often you put double devices in some locations, so you actually can get a peer-to-peer reading as well. So you have both calibration and calibration by assumption or the by sort of mapping it with another device. So that was a couple of reasons we went. We didn't have a preference for providers. It was more on functionality that decides what is available and what was selected more than a provider. I think the main thing is that it has to be able to have, temperature, humidity,
Mm-hmm.
and for certain areas we actually had PM 2.5, PM 10, and VOC as well. So yeah, and that was a lot for just in case when you store medical devices or you have chemicals, if there is a surge, then you may realize there's a leak or something somewhere. So that was part of the health and safety requirement.
Absolutely. And correct me if I'm wrong, Derek, but you were also in part of different acquisition within the group.
Yes, correct.
And connected to acquisitions, there is, of course, a financial background involved, but there is also, and this I'm not that interested in, but more on the how we integrate the different cultures and the different systems from different companies in order to provide, again, coming back to the data sharing and communication. So I imagine that like you are acquiring a new company and this new company has their own equipment, their own systems, their own information system. How was the challenge to integrate them all in order to provide a unified and standardized service to the customer?
So all I can say is that I was very lucky that the acquisitions were all general cargo warehouses. So we had no requirement for offering the same product to them. It was purely independent. But I think from general rule of thumb in the other acquisition I've done outside of Jazz, there's always that each site operates independently.
Mm-hmm.
And so you may replace your loggers and all that to get similar data, but generally each site has their own systems, and that feeds into your ERP or your other business build.
So there is kind of an integration layer that whatever system is used in every warehouse, then it's centralized at some point in order to report such information.
Correct. The challenge which we have and this is outside of Jazz, has always been that the clients always have a different requirement in each country or each site as well. So let's say my Argentine site will want a system which meets the Argentina requirements. Singapore has a Singapore requirement. Thailand has a Thailand requirement. So even if I, as a 3PL, has a unified system, my system across each has to be modified in each country to adapt to what they want.
The country requirements. It's always having kind of a
A
baseline
middle,
layer
yeah,
and then some specificities up and down to adapt the
yeah,
in-country requirements. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. There was something, I mean, as you see, Derek, this is more like a conversation. So topics
yeah.
are up and down depending and and connected to the infrastructure and cold chain logistics, there is a topic that I think can be very relevant for our audience, which is the energy consumption. We all know that logistics is one of the more energy is one of the industries where more energy is used. And especially if we are talking about cold chain logistics, that's even higher. I mean, we have active tracks, but I mean, just keeping a huge warehouse on a 2 to 8 or minus 20 degrees, that's a huge energy consumption. So how do you, which are the initiatives that you are launching or that you were involved in order to mitigate this energy consumption and the CO2 emissions in order to try to make a sustainable impact?
So you're right. Energy consumption is one of the biggest topics. I mean, with energy consumption, of course, the cost, right? Because keeping a building with air conditioning for 2 to 8 or minus 20 is a complete nightmare when it comes to cost. So naturally, the easiest action to take is to ensure that you've got, solar panels on the building, so you cover these most of the electricity usage during the daytime when there is the sunlight. So that is always a good one. The other one is also looking at what kind of optimizing you can do to keep the cold air within the facility. So that would be your two-layer curtains at your loading docks, building insulation, and also looking at what other temperature ranges you want to actually maintain your facility at. So to give an example, a 15 to 25 house, if your external temperature is 32 degrees Celsius, do you want to maintain it at 20 or do you want to go to 22, 23 degrees? Because that 2 or 3 degree difference can be a big change. The other thing also is we look at ways to get actually increase airflow within facility to in order to sort of really get the reduction in the need for air cooling. So that will be a hybrid of air conditioners with fans. The third thing also is your cooling system. I mean, we typically talk about your standard air conditioning systems, which are what they call VRV systems or air cooled systems. We also can look at water cooled systems for and which are a lot more capex, but then it overall your OpEx drops significantly.
Mm-hmm.
So that you basically have a chiller for water, and then that chilled water runs and powers your blowers with cool air. There are a few other options which I've heard in different kind of industries, but we don't really touch those at the moment. I think that's like nitrogen or something.
Okay, okay. So it's either focusing on more capex investment, and then you can reduce your OpEx
Yeah.
and try to make some, yeah, height advanced isolation in order to prevent as much as possible the.
Maybe I'll give you a bit of an irony for one of the two interesting things we've done. One of them is we have a requirement for a ambient area, so which is
Uh-huh.
uncontrolled temperature, but we want to keep it cool. So we built that area between two cool rooms. The, the area in between, so you have cold room on one side, another cold room on the other side, and you've got an empty area in the middle. The middle area actually ends up being under 25 degrees under most circumstances. So, but that is what you can sell as unmapped, but under 25 degrees. Other area which is more interesting, which is a bit of irony, is when you run a minus 20, because of the humidity in the Southeast Asia region, you actually get water droplets on the floor below or above. Instead, while you're cooling a room to minus 20, you also have to put heat pads in the floor in order to evaporate the water. So you've got to create cool, chill air, cold it, make it cold, and yet still heat it up to prevent the water droplets, the condensation. So that's a lot of irony, actually.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That you are heating the water to evaporate, and at the same time trying to cool the whole system. Yeah, not the most efficient thing, but
Nah,
okay,
yeah.
necessary.
But yeah, these are the operational challenges of someone who's building a facility and keeps forgetting. Then you suddenly see, why is my neighbor leaking or something?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, can you share, maybe you just share one, but which are the most strange situations that you experience while building a new facility, or which is the most strange requirement that a customer had while building a new facility or in collaboration with them?
So yeah, so I think this is the one which I talked about earlier in Taiwan, and this was not with Jazz, it was a different provider. We had to have a facility, and they wanted a particular outlook and a view for the office, and they wanted to put their facility just beside it. So it was on the fifth story of a building, fifth level. Fantastic facility, like I said, five-star facility, but they couldn't control the elevator. So and they built everything, and when I stepped in after that, then we was like, I said, so okay, how are you going to control your facility, your temperature range once you leave your front door? And they were like, oh, but it's X works terms, so it's no longer my problem. And then they said, how about intercompany transfers? Then you're like, yeah, but we don't really think about it for now.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. Quite funny.
so that was sort of like, how can you do something like that, right? And this was for clinical trials, blood samples as well. So that's why I was like, that's even weirder. The other one, of course, was where they tried to be extremely energy efficient. And so they built facilities with very small doors and very small loading bays. Perfect. Except that when they started to do medical devices, they couldn't bring the device in through the door.
Oh my God,
They built it for like 2.2 meters or something, so they couldn't get actually a CT scanner through the door.
it didn't fit. It didn't fit.
Yeah. Yeah, but and I understand why, because they planned it for small items. They didn't plan it for devices. But as a 3PL, you don't really know what business you will get, right?
Yeah, that's where the point that you were referring to before, trying to keep as a 3PL, trying to keep as much flexibility as possible because you never know what's going to happen in the future. And you
Yeah,
need to be flexible because the
yeah,
infrastructure and the facility is not changing every day. It's a huge
exactly.
CapEx investment, so you need to be flexible and try to cover as many scenarios as possible. So not try to go up to the limit in terms of energy efficient, etc., while trying to balance it out with the flexibility which is required for operating this kind of jobs. There is something I wanted also to ask you because we talk about facilities, we talk about some points about technology, IoT, artificial intelligence, and so on. But there is also one topic which I think is probably the most relevant, which is the cultural differences in different regions of the world. So what's the sensitivity of the cultural differences in terms of managing temperature sensitive product? Imagine, let's say, a vaccine. Is there any cultural implication on how the products are handled depending on the country or the region of the world that we are operating? Have you seen any big gap or discrepancy on that, or it's more or less equalized?
I would say that it's more from a pharma perspective, it's more or less equalized in that everyone knows the standard and everyone tries their best to follow the standard. There are countries where they have a culture of it's good enough, that it doesn't have to be perfect. If I've got a 10-hour journey, if 7 hours out of 10 is in the right condition is good enough. And then there's also a culture where they don't try not to waste, and so some of them would actually try and ensure that if something goes wrong, can we do a quick service recovery? Now, that's
Hmm.
where it starts going wrong is, example, you have a vaccine and it goes below zero and it freezes and you try and defrost it. It's not the same as when it was not frozen. So
No,
that,
absolutely.
in theory, you should actually just dispose it. But I have seen cases where they tried to unfreeze it and tell us that, hey, it was not frozen. Yeah. Yeah. So
And
that's
that deals
another.
to the previous concept that you also mentioned, which is transparency. But when talking about transparency, there is always like a conflict of interest there,
Yes.
because I mean, from a logistics provider, it's in your interest not to report which are the deviations that your product has happened. So imagine the vaccines that got frozen. So what's the interest of a 3PL or a logistics provider to report to the pharma company, hey, sorry, this vaccine was frozen. It's our fault, basically. We need to dispose it and send another batch. So how do we balance out, or how, I mean, probably adjust, it was
No,
like
I would say
100%.
that, so quite from my perspective, when I was managing my teams, it's a very clear, if it's a deviation, it's a deviation. There's no, it's a very a black or white kind of rule. There's no gray that it was, you know, mine, it was say, let's say 2 to 8, it was 1 degree, then it went back to 2, so on average is good enough kind of thing. I would say that if it's a deviation, it's a deviation, and the temperature logger will tell the story whether you tell it or not. So for this, in this purpose, or for this case, it's definitely there's no discussion about it. As a 3PL, you have to report something like that, which happens because it's the integrity of the product and it's integrity to the final, the end user.
Yeah, and it's also a matter of trust. I mean, because those are long relationships with customers where building trust takes so long, and the trust can disappear so rapidly as well.
Yeah. But I think where we see, I've seen quite a bit of more interesting reporting, right? And this is in a very positive case. A medical device was stored at 15 to 25,
Hmm.
and it exceeded 25. So we reported. But what was interesting was the actual temperature range for the product is minus 20 to 40 degrees. And so you do the right thing because there was your client asked you to store at 15 to 25, you report it, and then you also know that there should not be a claim because it was at what 26 degrees or something, so it's fine, no problem. And then the client comes back and said, "Oh, okay, we want to put a penalty on you and we want to charge you for a product which I'm going to sell." And that's when you have questions about your life choices, if you should have reported or not, right? Yeah,
Yeah. Okay, but I can understand almost everything, but that's a challenging situation indeed.
Yeah, I mean, I've had one client try and do that. It's like the product can go to
It's
40
okay.
degrees. It's okay, and you're selling the product, and you want me to pay for the product again.
So it's like a double payment. So
Yeah,
it's a good
yeah,
way. It's actually a good way to increase your margins.
yeah, true.
It's
For the
getting
client, not
money.
for us. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for client. The client. It's. I think we cover most of the topics that we want to discuss. We cover about infrastructure, technology, people's mindset, and some operational procedures. Is there any other topic that you would like to touch upon, Derek?
Maybe about the changes and how AI and IoT will change the industry. So I
Okay.
know that for
What's your view on
Trueco,
that?
so my view on that is that there will be a lot of changes, but it's going to be going through a long path where we can't get a universal standard. I mean, it took years to get to a standard of what we need to report, and I think with AI progressing that quickly, we don't see a standard coming up soon. And that's where I think there's a bit of concern of can we even get to a standard where we understand each other globally? Because right now, within regions, everyone's asking their own questions and their own views on it.
If I can re-ask,
And that was my question to you also. I mean, how would you?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Do we really need a standard? Meaning, with these new AI capabilities, do we need to standardize? I mean, having kind of a standardization was really necessary back in the 90s, in the 2000 and so on. But now with AI, I mean, we can. Have you seen, for instance, the earbuds from Apple that
Yes.
you can speak in your native language? I can speak in my native language, and everyone is listening the conversation in the language that they feel more comfortable with. So I think that actually standardization is not going to be anymore a hard requirement. So we just need a middleware or a data layer who is able to interpret whatever language you are talking, and in order to reply or answer the questions in the way that the receiver of the information requested. So that's my view, that everyone can communicate the way that they feel more comfortable, while the receiver in such communication will get the questions answered in the way that they need it. So there is no, because so far there was a lot of effort put into integrations, API connections, EDI integrations. Those are kind of painful projects. I've
Hmm.
been involved in some of them, so I can tell you firsthand. Which at some point they don't bring that much value, because
Hmm.
it's all a matter of data mapping, data standardization, and so on. While today I think we are in front of a possibility of that everyone is able to communicate the way that they feel more comfortable, and the receiver will get the information in the way that they need it, just by adding a layer of data abstraction, who is able to translate and connect the dots between the
Okay.
sender and receiver. Does it make sense?
It makes perfect sense, and I'll be looking forward to that day where we don't have to agree on a standard because then it's a lot simpler for everyone.
Yeah, that only agreeing on a standard takes ages, because everyone has a
Yes.
saying on that, and
Yeah.
so I mean, having kind of a baseline is good, and there are some organizations which are already working on those kind of standards. I think that the added value of having a standard is decreasing as far as we are able to adapt quicker into the different ways of communicating data. And I will keep for myself the thing of converting data, less data and more information.
For
That's something I
sure.
want to keep.
Agreed. Sounds good.
So if that's okay, there is a section in the podcast that we typically run at the beginning of the podcast, but for you, I thought it was more interesting to run it at the end,
Okay.
just so audience can get to know you a bit better. So then I will ask you, if that's okay, like very quick questions that you should try to answer in one word or one sentence maximum.
Okay.
So then the audience will know you better, not from a pure professional perspective, but also know you as a person.
Perfect.
Yeah. Let me check. And well, what's your age, Derek?
Always a tough one. Between 40 and 50.
Okay, you gave a range, like a temperature range.
Yes.
Which country do you live?
Singapore.
If you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be?
Maldives.
Nice. What's the most useless talent that you have?
Singing.
You are a good singer.
No, I'm a horrible singer, and I never want to.
Are you a sea or a mountain person?
Sorry,
Do you prefer
sea. Yeah,
do
for
you
sure, the
prefer the
sea.
sea? Yeah, yeah, I imagine that.
Maldives, no mountains.
Maldives.
Yeah,
If you could only eat one food for the rest of your life, which food would it be?
pizza.
Pizza.
Yeah, fat and unhealthy.
Yeah. Which popular food do you think is completely overrated?
Subway.
Okay, sandwich.
Yeah, specifically Subway sandwiches, not any sandwich, but just the Subway ones.
Okay, so we are not getting Subway as a sponsor in this podcast.
Yes.
uh, the best book or movie that you have ever read or watched? Anyone that you would like to recommend? Doesn't need to be necessarily related to.
I am going to actually say that Top Gun was one of the best in the latest iteration. To see a 60-year-old sweating it out on a flight, and thank God it's not me, that was purely worth it.
Okay, so the last one from Tom Cruise.
Yeah, yes. To see him
Okay,
sweating it out is better than me sweating it out.
so it's all about comparison. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you could have dinner with any historical figure, which one would you choose?
All right, I'm gonna be go. Nah, I shouldn't say that. Anyway, historical. How back do we go?
It's up to you. You define from. I mean, you can go as many far as you want.
It's a very tough one, and everything I say is gonna be wrong. So maybe I'll pass on this one. But
Okay,
okay, the names I was thinking of just for reference: Bill Clinton, Marilyn Monroe, and I'm like both are wrong options.
doesn't need to be necessarily wrong, especially Marilyn Monroe. I wouldn't.
Yes,
I wouldn't mind to have dinner with her also.
exactly. Yes.
Last one, Derek. If you could time travel, to which period of history would you like to be?
So
In the 70s, I guess because of the music.
the music, the lack of technology.
My God, you destroyed the whole episode now. We have been talking about facility IoT devices, AI power, and now you said I would like to be back in the 70s where there was no technology at all.
It's kind of like I want AI with a Nokia,
All right,
but I'm sure it gives everyone a bit of food for thought and going AI with a Nokia is probably different.
absolutely. So Derek, that was it for my side. It was a great pleasure having you with us today. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. You provide some relevant insights about infrastructure, different cultures, technology, and mindset. So thank you for sharing your insights with me and the audience. And take care and see you soon.
Take care. See you soon.
Thank you.